154 books last year, and here's how. Hi, I'm Ravine. Welcome to Ravine Trip Books, and today I will be discussing how I read 154 books last year. Let's get into it. So I wrote my bar exams last year. For some of you that know, so I became a lawyer last year, and we had 2 months in school. So January was when we got back to school, and then February was when we wrote the bar finals. So in January I was able to read 5 books. In February, because everywhere was hot, I couldn't read anything. Like, I couldn't even read any single thing aside from my law books and all that. Anyways, we finished our exams February. I shared that we ended our exams in February, and March was a new month, and so we stepped into March, and I blew my mind. I read 20 books in March, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the highest you can go. I did it again in April. I read 20 books in April, so that was 40 books, and then plus the 5 earlier on, that was 45. I was like, girl, you impressing me, so maybe we can hit 100 a lot early. So when I hit 100, I was really surprised, because I was like, girl, this is good. And then I hit 120, and I hit 150, and I hit 154. It was so nice. Now, these are the things I did that helped me do that. First things first is finding access to books. So I think one of the reasons why I struggled with reading a while back was because I did not have access to some books. And the thing is, you have to have legal access to books, especially if you are a book influencer. So one thing I did was get registered on Everand. So I had a 1 month free subscription on Everand. They give you a 1 month free subscription plan, and I used it and I loved it. That was my first proper introduction to audiobooks. This is very important to note, because earlier on I had been trying audiobooks, but it wasn't just going well for me. And then I tried Everand, and for some reason it stuck. And the first book that I listened to audiobook properly, I mean without having to replay certain scenes over and over again, was The Widow's Husband's Secret Life by Frida McFadden. I think that's the title, but it was just a very, very crazy book. That's why I'm able to remember it, because I was like, what is going on here? And yeah, so I realized then that I think the reasons why I struggled with listening to audiobook was that I needed my audiobooks being a particular way, and the way that it seemed to be only thrillers that could hit the nail on the head. So I was like, okay, message got in, I'm going to stick to thrillers, and I listened to a number of thrillers, and that's how that happened. So I listened to on my Instagram, there's a breakdown of how many books I read for ebooks, physical books, and audiobooks. So that was where I have the breakdown of how many audiobooks I listened to last year. So that was one of the things that helped Everand and audiobooks. Secondly, I had access to NetGalley. So someone had been telling me about NetGalley, and I was like, you know what, let me just give it a try. And you guys, I think let's say 60, okay, let me be very distant, maybe 40% of the books I read last year were from NetGalley. And because I knew what I liked, so I went for them. So I went for thrillers, I went for romance, I went for last year was the year I fell into the enemies to lovers territory because of 2 books. One is by Adesua Nwokedi. That's a physical book. I reviewed it earlier on in the previous video, not my previous videos. The second one is Mourners for Hire. And you guys, I ate it up. It was such a beautiful book. I think I even got in touch with the author. I can't really remember, but it was so beautiful. It was such beautiful enemies to lovers, and I think that's where I like my enemies to lovers to be. Not too toxic, just like, I despise you, but if you're dying, I'm going to save you. That kind of thing. Like, there's still a shred of humanity and dignity despite the so-called hate. So another thing that helps us, I have to be discussing books. So last year I started a monthly space where I discussed books, and the first book we discussed, I was invited to host a space at Adesua. Now that's different. I mean, the one I personally hosted was the one where I talked about Something Kind of Madness by Uche Okonkwo. I don't know why I'm forgetting titles of books. This is so weird. But yeah, that was like my first space, and it went so good. So I was like, okay, you know what, let's say this. Another thing is, I found books that I was interested in. I keep on emphasizing this. When you find books you're interested in, reading just becomes a total breeze for you. You don't want to do anything aside reading the books that you're with. which is why I keep on emphasizing find books you're interested in. If it is thriller you're interested in, find your thriller. If it is romance, find thrillers, and if it is romance, find romance and read your romance. Just have fun with books, and I think one way to find that out is by exploring different genres. So last year I explored speculative fiction. I think that's also called that, because there was this book I read. It was so crazy, but I loved it, and I was like, well, it's not my first speculative fiction book. It's not the first, but there was something about this one that was just really kind of special. So I was like, you know what, I ate this up. I liked it. I enjoyed it. Another thing is, I think if you really want to do something, my people, okay, my mom still, I'm a very silent person, which means like if I want to go for something, I go for it, no matter how hard it is. For example, Roving Through Book series. You guys will not believe the number of times my body broke down during this series. You would not believe it. Me myself, I did not believe it, but because I wanted to do it, I did it. Now, the thing is, despite the fact that I'm a silent, it also means that there sometimes I make certain concessions. Like now, my goal this year was to read 100 books. But I mean, seeing that I have 100 videos on YouTube, I should try to give myself a little slack to like, girl, you did good. So maybe you should try and cut that down to maybe 50 or 70 thereabouts. So yeah, so make concessions for yourself if you can't hit your concessions, because if you can't hit your goals, because in as much as it's important that you hit your goals, you smash them, how you feel about it is also important. It should not make you feel like, oh, I'm not ready to be, I'm gonna die. Don't, it's not that deep. Not that deep. So if you feel like you need to see a movie or a series or something, just do it. Having people you discuss books with too can be a ginger. Like when you're like, gosh, I'm gonna go and discuss books with people. Sometimes for some people it doesn't work for them, but for someone like me it works. Sometimes, not all the time. Where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go and talk about this book, I'm so happy, yay! And that's pretty much the excitement about that. So I think everybody or anybody can read 150 plus books. Be open to new genres. Don't feel like, oh, because this is what this genre is about, I'm not gonna read it. When you find a genre you like, hold it tight. Last year for me it was thrillers. I don't know how many thrillers I read, you guys. I don't know why I was reading so many thrillers, but I read so many. So many. I listened to a number of Freya McFadden's books, and it was a very nice experience. I don't know why, but listening to thrillers, I highly recommend it. If you want to get into audiobooks, maybe you should start with thrillers, because I started with some other genres and I didn't quite enjoy it. But when I moved to thrillers, I was like, gosh, this is the gist of everything. Now that's how I read 154 plus books. Okay, yes, also, if you need any help getting books legally, I would recommend NetGalley. I also recommend Everround if you can afford it. I can also recommend Masterbear Books. I also recommend StoryPod. I also recommend Libby. I don't use Libby, that's why it's coming in last, but people use it and they say it's really, really good. Anyways, that's all for me today. Bye. See you in my next video.